All-Pro wide receiver Brandon Aiyuk once again indicates he would like to be traded to the Washington Commanders. I'll talk about that and cover the latest at the top of today's show. Then we go over the latest free agency rumors surrounding the Washington Commanders. Could they bring in edge rusher Carl Lawson to finish up the offseason? And could they bring back Charles Leno Jr. to help out the offensive line? Make sure you guys stick around for those free agency rumors and where I give my take. But first, make sure you guys click that subscribe button and help us move up the Chat Sports Power Rankings here at Chat Sports. And we are now within striking distance of Ravens Rundown by Chat Sports, our Ravens channel here at Chat Sports, hosted by none other than Tyler Jones himself, where he bet me a steak dinner 2 weeks ago, guys, that we couldn't pass him up before the start of the season, and right now we are about to make good on that bet. I bet a steak dinner on it, guys, so help me out right now. Click that subscribe button if you haven't already to help me win this bet and help us get to 17,000 subscribers before Ravens Rundown. And new viewers, I am counting on you guys. If lots of the people that watch this show are already subscribed, they can't help me out here. Only the new people can help me out, so make sure you click that subscribe button for daily Commanders content here on YouTube. So our top story today has once again, Brandon Aiyuk. It feels like we've done more Brandon Aiyuk videos than any other topic here on the Commanders Report over this offseason. But once again, he is once again in the news. So I'm going to break down kind of the latest stuff that has been said here. Brandon Aiyuk said this on the Pivot podcast. He said, if I'm not in a Niners uniform next year, probably a Washington Commanders uniform, indicating that if he gets traded from the 49ers this year, he would like to play with his buddy Jayden Daniels here in Washington. Shortly after that podcast came out, this report from Tom Pelissero came out about his meeting with the San Francisco 49ers. Aiyuk and the Niners brass met on Monday at Aiyuk's request. This was a good meeting from what I was told. Both sides said that things needed to be said, and they're going to keep working. It's important to note here, there's never been a trade request from Brandon Aiyuk. That hasn't changed. The 49ers' stance hasn't changed either. Despite getting trade calls on Aiyuk going back to draft week, they're moving forward, and they want Aiyuk to be part of the team in 2024. So after that report, a lot of people thought, yeah, Brandon Aiyuk's not going to get traded. But then shortly after that report came out, JPA Football came out with a report. The 49ers and Commanders discussed a potential Brandon Aiyuk trade before the draft, but the Commanders opted against going through with it. And then Brandon Aiyuk commented on that post saying, but I thought the Niners was never going to trade me, opening the doors to a potential trade request yet again. And then earlier this week, Brandon Aiyuk went live on his TikTok showing that he is breaking down Washington Commander OTA practice film, indicating that he is learning Cliff Kingsbury's playbook in the event of a trade that would send him to the Washington Commanders. This is another big development in this saga. Now, what I'll say here is that it's pretty clear that Brandon Aiyuk is kind of jockeying for positioning here. He's trying to shift the narrative once again so the Niners will give him the money that he wants. But it's also pretty clear that if he gets traded, he wants to come to the nation's capital and play with Jayden Daniels, who is his friend going back to college. They work out together during the offseason. They hang out together all the time. They talk every single day. And you know that if he's not going to be wearing a Niner uniform next year, he wants to be a Commander. However, I don't think a trade is going to happen, and this is the sentiment that I have been sharing on this show for weeks, and the reasoning for this, guys, is the San Francisco 49ers just don't have any incentive to let go of Aiyuk at this point. They just made the Super Bowl last year, and they are a couple plays away from winning the darn thing, and any trade capital that San Francisco gets in a trade this year, and if it's just trade capital, then, or just draft capital, I should say, I mean, they're not going to be able to use those picks until next offseason anyway, so you're essentially giving up an all-pro caliber player for no return on your investment for the 2024 season. And at the end of the day, guys, I mean, trading Aiyuk would give this offense a big downgrade in total talent, and you would really be relying on rookie Ricky Pearsall to step up into his role if they want to win a Super Bowl. So my prediction here is I don't think a deal is going to get done between the 49ers and Aiyuk. Who knows? It could. Something might happen, right? The 49ers have been known to make deals later on in the offseason. I mean, last year with Nick Bosa, they waited all the way till September to get his deal done. So who knows if a deal will get done, but it seems like these guys are pretty far apart. But I think the Niners will keep him on the roster for this season, and then Aiyuk will hit the open market as a free agent in the 2025 offseason. So what say you guys? Let me know down there in the comments section. Will Aiyuk be traded this offseason? Predict it for me. Type T if you think he's going to get traded, or type N if you think he won't be traded and he'll be a 49er next year. This is going to be the pinned comment on today's show. So YouTube's going to throw you an ad break here in just a couple of seconds. And when that happens, take advantage of that time by answering today's pinned question. So now let's shift to free agency here, where USA Today's Bryan Manning put out an article saying that the Washington Commanders should consider bringing in edge rusher, who's still a free agent here, former starter, Carl Lawson, formerly with the New York Jets. And right now, at this point in the offseason, guys, I think Lawson would be extremely affordable. This is what Manning had to say about the possibility. Carl Lawson remains unsigned. He is 29 and spent the past 3 seasons with the Jets. He missed the 2021 season and played well in 2022, but barely played last season. He had 7 sacks just 2 years ago. Sure, Lawson may not replace Montez Sweat's production, but he likely offers more as a pass rusher than Clelin Ferrell. Lawson could be signed on the cheap and give Washington a rotational edge rusher who is poised to show he can still play. Now, personally, guys, I wouldn't mind this. I mean, I'm always up for building the trenches, fortifying, one of the most important units on an NFL football field. But I just don't think that, Washington really sees this as a major need, because you have to remember, in this Dan Quinn / Joe Witt Jr. style of defense, they're going to have a hybrid edge rusher linebacker type playing that Micah Parsons role, and they expect that to be Jayden Daniels. Now, Frankie Louvu, somebody that's had double-digit sacks the past 2 seasons, will also be blitzing a lot. They're going to be having very multiple fronts. They're going to move Jayden Daniels around, but I think that they view Johnny Newton, kind of an undersized defensive tackle, as almost like that 5 technique, which is technically a 3-4 defensive end, kind of a bigger one, and I think he fits that perfectly, and that makes more sense than putting him at defensive tackle, because the Commanders already have Jonathan Allen and Daron Payne. So this is certainly something here where if you look at it this way and you have Jayden Daniels listed as an edge rusher and Dorrance Armstrong's perfectly fine as a number 2 guy, Dante Fowler's a really good rotational guy, you can certainly see why Dan Quinn and Joe Witt Jr. already have the guys that they want on the roster. Now, if you're looking at it from like a 4-3 front for idea here, where you have Clelin Ferrell as an every down starter, yeah, I can understand why some people would want Carl Lawson instead of Clelin Ferrell, but I honestly don't think Ferrell's going to be like a super every down type starter. I think he'll get in the rotation, but I think that Johnny Newton by season's end will be that 3-4 defensive end type that's going to fit into this scheme. And I think it's going to be very dangerous what Dan Quinn and Joe Witt Jr. is going to be bringing to the table this year in terms of their defensive scheme. But let me know down there in the comments section your thoughts. Would you like the Commanders to sign Carl Lawson on the cheap as a rotational edge rusher? Type S if you would sign him, or type P if you're going to pass on him and you think the Commanders pass rush is doing just fine. Final topic today. I mean, I know a lot of you guys out there just absolutely hate Charles Leno Jr., and you're glad that he's gone. But Pro Football Network's Lorenzo Reyna put out a list of 1 free agent that every NFL team should bring in before the start of their training camp. And for the Commanders, he picked none other than Charles Leno Jr. This is what Reyna had to say about bringing back the former Commander left tackle. The Washington Commanders have a young passer to keep intact in Jayden Daniels. Charles Leno Jr. can be brought back for experience and depth reasons, having spent the last 3 years in D.C., starting in 47 total games. And really, at this point in the offseason, guys, you haven't been able to get David Bakhtiari. Donovan Smith seems like somebody that the Commanders are not interested in at this point, but yet you still have a massive issue at offensive tackle, at least in my opinion. Now, they did bring in Cornelius Lucas in free agency. They did bring him back. Right, you did draft Brandon Coleman in the middle rounds this year. And then Andrew Wiley, of course, he's back on his big contract number, even though he gave up 9 sacks last season. But I definitely think the tackle position is definitely in a rough spot right now. And, Charles Leno Jr. isn't the best offensive tackle in the world, all right? Especially against some of the better guys like Micah Parsons. He can really look silly, and there's some really bad reps on tape, and those things go viral like crazy on X. But you look at the overall Pro Football Focus grade from an aggregate standpoint, he's actually pretty effective, 72.5 PFF grade last year. It's not phenomenal, but it is the highest among current free agents that had at least 60 snaps last year in the regular season. So in terms of the guys that are still available, you can make an argument that Leno is still the best guy on the market. And you take a look at his Pro Football Focus grades over the last 8 years, it's not like he's been a bad offensive tackle. He's about replacement level. He's fine. He's nothing special. He's going to get beat by some of the better guys. And in fact, he's going to look like a damn fool at times against some of the best edge rushers in the world. But you look at the consistency there, consistently over 70 in the Pro Football Focus grading department. In fact, just back in 2021, he got into the 80s, right? He only has one season below 70 in the last 8 years, and that was in 2019 with the Bears. And guys, the reason why the Washington Commanders cut Charles Leno this offseason was one reason and one reason only. Money, right? You wanted more money. You wanted more cap space. Charles Leno Jr. was not worth the price tag that would have been his price tag in his cap figure for the 2024 season. But now that he's a free agent and now that the rest of the market has seemed to reject him, it seems like he can come in at a very reasonable contract, and that's no longer an issue for the Washington Commanders. Plus, he has experience playing here. It's somewhere that he's obviously comfortable playing in. He'd have a little bit more chemistry with the guys in the building. And listen, man, I'm not trying to sit up here and say Charles Leno Jr. is great or that he's going to be an awesome left tackle. But could he be the best offensive tackle option to play on the left side? Still available out of the guys still available for the Commanders to consider? I think that it's definitely possible because Cornelius Lucas, I think he played okay last year, but honestly, I think Leno probably played better than him last season. And then Brandon Coleman, I do not think is going to be ready to play right away. It seems like David Bakhtiari isn't an option. Same thing with Donovan Smith. So if Charles Leno Jr. wants to come back here to Washington and you can get him for a cheap contract, honestly, I think I'd probably consider it. Now let me know down there in the comments section, would you bring back Charles Leno Jr. on the cheap this season? Type yes or type no. Let me know what you guys are thinking down there in the comments. Thank you guys so much for all of your support. Again, if you liked what you heard today and you want more Commanders content every single day here on YouTube, 100% free, make sure you click that subscribe button and help us pass Ravens Rundown and help me win my bet with Ravens host Tyler Jones.